welcome you to the Listening to the Earth podcast. This podcast is focused on voices that are building their relationship with the earth. As we stand in today's time and this very dynamic world, I'm highlighting these voices as I find for myself and for those around me, it brings a sense of peace. Here we have with us today is Gemma Betten. She's a traditional native singer, an intuitive artist, and a community activist. Gemma is an artist, and she has many pieces available for sale and for viewing at a design studio called Kimberly Rees International in San Francisco, California. If you're in the area, you should check it out. An intuitive artist, Gemma's work brings such emotion and such clarity for yourself as an individual, grounding yourself into today's time. Another strong point that I want to bring attention to about Gemma is that she's an MMIW activist, and her work has been focused for several years on bringing the community as a large the attention needed for this.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, it's such an honor to be here, Era, and to be having this conversation with you. I think we've been brewing on this conversation for this last year or so, and so it's exciting to be here with you. And I love that you're creating this podcast and the the conversations wherever those conversations lead us, both personally and then collectively. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Gemma, would you like to speak any more about any of your projects and what you're currently working on?
Yeah, so I guess to me, the thing I want to say about, like my art and all of my workshops is, really, it's all about moving into relationship. It just as, your podcast is about relationship with the earth, and, like activities that put our hands and feet on the earth. I think similarly, my work is, being in relationship with the sacred, and that sacred being within me, inside of me and through me, and with you, and inside of you and through you. And then together, all of us as sovereign beings, standing together. So my art, the flow conversation is all, is all part of that. It's all part of like creating these opportunities for us to be present and to really move into those conversations, within ourselves and together. And knowing that like this is the language that, that we're creating. So my art is oftentimes, it's created out of those sacred places. And it's reflective of that kind of energy. So I am just thrilled, like just recently, the thing with Kimberly Reyes happened. And she is such an amazing designer. And that she said, yeah, I'd love to have your art up in my gallery in San Francisco. I'm like, what? And so, and to me, like, this is something that, like this is another opportunity for me to influence those personal spaces inside of our lives, like to have these sanctuaries, and that's the way I see it. Like this art is a portal, right? It's an opportunity, to stand with the sacred as we view it in our lives, and to take a moment, just as we do with a tree, or on the earth, to take a moment and really be present to ourselves and the way that the sacred is reflected, in the other and with us, So, yeah, it's exciting stuff we're doing here, and we're as challenging as it is, to be in these exciting times, because I think that part of what happens, is happening, right, is that, like we're in the crucible right now, like it's tough, and all of that stuff is boiling up to the surface, and this is like another level of shaping. This is another level of transforming ourselves and then collectively, right? So, like I, you and I, and for the listeners, like they don't know how we met, but, we want to bring that into the conversation. Like we met in one of those crucible places, right? And intentionally, I think we all there was a handful of us that were quite close there on the land, and so we moved into somewhere in the proximity of 2020, 21, moving into relationship with the land and with a community in an eco-village in Oregon, right? Outside of Eugene, Oregon. And I think we, like you and I talked about this, like we had an awareness that we were signing up for something deep, but we had no idea we were going to be doing it in the middle of COVID. Black Lives Matter, the huge transformation that's happening there. And, being faced with all of this contradiction in a place that we felt like should be safe, right? And the way that shaped us and our conversations. Wow, that's intense. That's intense. So, to me, like you were, like I recognized you, like I just have this beautiful memory of you, Era, that I want to share with everybody because it was like we were looking at being there. And I remember you being in the garden with, simultaneously, right? Like nursing baby girl, nursing your daughter and, you know, like, you know, picking peas and, like I just loved your energy immediately. Like I connected with you immediately and saw you as one of those people that I was really looking forward to being in relationship with there on the land. And now I kind of understand more why. And so we'll kind of like share that with with our listeners. But like from the first time I saw you, like I connected with you immediately with that deep resonance, of love, like not just talking about like how we love the earth and that we love, these things, but really having her energy, their energy inside, and being in relationship with that. And I think that's what drew us together, like I think that's what, at that deep soul level, like we knew,
when we
we
first
were,
met, we were like, I've known you.
I've known you. Yeah.
My soul knows you.
My soul knows you. And we have this moment we're here for together. Right. And, let's find out what that's about. And then knowing that, like there's always been a deep sense, still is a deep sense for me that like there's more, there'll be more, and so always looking forward to that with you and whatever that, whatever comes next. So, yeah. So, do we want to spill the beans about, like some of the experiences that we had on the land? Do we want to talk about like that hot mess?
Well, it was like a boil, right? It was like coming to the surface and how are we going to heal? And through that healing, I think it brought a group of us together and it wove us very tightly together.
Yeah.
What Gemma and I are speaking to is that while living together in community, we co-created together with a group of, I think it was 7 of us in total.
Something like that, yeah.
Yes, 7 of us in total, something called the Solidarity Circle. Gemma, do you want to speak a little more to that?
Yeah, so we found ourselves in the middle of this conversation in COVID, in the middle of this uprising around Black, the death of George Floyd, most immediately, and all, God bless every single one of them, all of the lives that have been lost around, racial violence, specifically, those Black lives, and finding ourselves in a community that was largely white. And largely very privileged around this whole idea of, living organically and, being in relationship with the land and then, what all of this meant. And there was a handful of us, right, that were of color. So we had, one Black woman, beautiful Black artist, poet, very just amazing individual. And my husband and I, as Native people, living on the land. And then we had another beautiful woman who is Cambodian, and all of you, wonderful people who said we're standing with them, and that's where the solidarity circle came into being. Because one of the things that we realized is in this conversation, like we're talking about, like that crucible, that bubbling up, the boil, the abscessed sick parts of us, right, and that was all up. And we found that, these conversations, especially when we're living together in community, and especially when there's a deep love for the land, a deep relationship with the land, right, that it brings up all of this for ourselves. Like, like there's some ancestral stuff happening there, right? Some ancestral healing in our own bones that has to be done. But then in relationship with the land, and we know specifically, with that land that we were on, that it was, it was a Kalapuya village site. There was, sacred plants there to the Kalapuya. The camas, were very much their food and their medicine. And there was a traditional way of being with that land, and with with the camas specifically, and the center of this particular village was that meadow that is almost like the whole energy of the land. The heart was there in the meadow, and it's such a beautiful, powerful place, and people recognized it by having like there within this community there is a big ecstatic dance community and a movement, I guess I would say too, and that's powerful. And they were having, on the land in the meadow, their ecstatic dance events, right? And so there was, I think intuitively for all of us, a recognition that this place, this meadow, this specific spot that we were living in is sacred, right? And that it's powerful. Like it's very much alive, and it's very much having something that it wants to be in dynamic relationship, communicating with us, right? Mm-hmm. As an intelligent sovereign being. So, I think, we didn't, at least I didn't, landing there, expect that, you want to do some healing? Here we go. Here we go.
Ding, 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 ding.
Exactly. So, wow, it was super, super intense. But I know that,
and an unraveling.
That unraveling of everything.
Yeah.
Do you want to say more about that for you, like what you saw?
Well, it happened. This occurred during COVID too, and so in Oregon there was an immense shutdown, like very difficult for people to leave their homes. And so what it ended up happening to the outside world was that everyone was isolated, and so it was a very much of a forcing of coming together. Like it forced people to be in deeper relationship with each other. It forced us to be in deeper relationship with the land, and I truly believe that because of that we saw this unraveling of deep trauma, and in many different levels within ourselves. Like I myself received so much deep healing from the land, and spent immense amount of time with her and building my relationship with her, and with the people in my life, and through this, like we call it like the oyster shell, this oyster shell of like the pandemic, and then like all of these events going in the outside world. It was a micro version of it. We there was a huge collective realization eventually that we were no different, and then there was different ideals of how to deal with it. And the group that Gemma and I are speaking to, we believed very strongly that there was a different way of dealing with it than what had been happening in the group, in the community before.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you explained that so well. I love that about you. you have a way of really extracting the truth and then really bringing that out. So
Mm,
yeah, thank you for sharing that gift and all of that.
thank you.
The oyster, eh?
Yeah.
So
The healing is a pearl. Like I received
yeah,
so much healing, like I
yeah,
received you.
yeah.
You were a gift,
Likewise, yeah,
the gift of the friendships that I still hold from the Sladary circle, like those are my deepest relationships in my life.
yeah. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. I mean, it's so true. I mean, even the relationship with the land, it was just, like that too.
Mhm.
Like I even thinking about it, I get a little, I get a little sad,
Mm,
about, all that we experienced, there. But it was all powerful. It was all part of the healing, just like you were talking about. But I think part of what the solidarity circle, like, in a way, because of, as like in this circle, we had, a black woman and myself and my husband, kind of in the lead there, and coming from those experiences of racism and oppression, right, and wanting those conversations to be different in this time, wanting the conversations of historical trauma, wanting it to be different for the land, wanting the
mm,
land, like that was part of, like, my husband and I recognized, when we first went there, that time that we met, the first time I met you, right, like in the garden with baby girl and and the peas. um we had gone there to check out the land, and immediately, I could feel her voice. My husband had dreams, about the spirit of the land coming to him, and um, for him, he's Western Shoshone, I'm Menominee, and and again, so this is the land of the Kalapuya that we're talking about, and I just want to address, that, and acknowledge, the Kalapuya people, and all of our ancestors. But we, when we first came to that land, the way that we do as Native people is to address the land. So we went out to the meadow, which we recognized just intuitively was the heart of the community, the heart of this place, and we put out tobacco, and we offered sacred water, just praying with the water, and um, offered songs, and asking permission, like, for us to be there, asking permission, like, and like, just checking in. Is this where you want us to be? Is this a place for us? And definitely feeling that. And, you know, um, and of course, what that looks like, like once, spirit says yes, and then what happens afterwards is, often, like
different.
different. And,
Than what
and
you
the
think that
thing,
yes means.
yeah, yeah. And so that, like, for that moment of that yes, we were in relationship with each other. Like, there was a deep needing to be with the land, right? And like recognizing that there had been trauma, on that Kalapuya land, that the Kalapuya people had, not too far away from there, had massacres, right? That we know that there was, before the pioneer, there are, there's a family cemetery on that land there. But before those folks were there, that the Kalapuya, were there, and that whatever difficulty, hardship, whatever happened there, and we know that there were some massacres nearby. I suspect that there were some deaths on the land itself too, and some violence on the land. Definitely, like I had, experienced, memories with the land. Um, of there being trauma, and specifically, like violence towards women. And, one of the things that I have done years ago in my life was to, work with the local tribes with the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act under NAGPRA to protect sacred sites. And through that process, it was a powerful journey for me. But one of the things that I really saw, like, very, very clearly, is the way that trauma is stored inside of the body of the earth.
Mm,
Like in the same way that it's stored inside each of us when we experience trauma. and that she will communicate that need for healing through our lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Through, like, we have historical enactments, I say. Historical reenactments of the trauma, right?
Like the repeating of that.
Over and over and over again. And we saw
Mm-hmm.
that on the land, like we saw that on the land from the moment that we were there. And so for me, and I think, for you, that all of us, and for, that core crew of solidarity, we had talked about it in many different ways, but that there was an awareness that we were part of the healing, that we were part of what she needed, that mechanism that she needed to be expressed in ways. And so for me, like, of course, I wanted it different. I wanted it different for all of us. I wanted it, and I wanted it different for the land, and in ways of solidarity, Circle was trying to. We had a big agenda to try to bring not only awareness of how that trauma is like illuminated, enacted through our lives, but then, and it was presently happening, in our lives. And then, like, how do we bring healing from that? How do we bring something meaningful, some kind of different experience through, like, how do we do that? And, God, that was rough. It was painful, but there were some powerful places.
Yeah.
And there's one in particular that I'm thinking about. Do you know what I'm thinking about?
The meadow fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was so beautiful.
Mm.
And it was so powerful. It was like, like the land itself, had brought ceremony to us, through the fire. So, and through the meadow. But, so, the meadow, again, as this traditional place, and where the camas, there was, it was just a field of camas in there. And, traditionally, Native peoples, the Kalapuya people, have a tradition of burning, of intentional burning, and doing that in community with each other. And so, from the very beginning, that was something that I wanted to bring into the conversation, was like, for us with, Kalapuya folks at the lead, Native and Indigenous people at the lead, and then, all of us coming together in a sacred
As a community.
way.
Yeah.
As a community, right? In conversation around, like, how can we be part of this healing, for this place, for each other. And God, so that was part of, my vision from the very beginning, like, that bringing back that intentional burns, those ceremonial burns, traditional burns, could be part of this collective healing that we need, and that specifically on the land, what was needed. So, so what happened, like, again, we say yes to this idea, and then something else happens, right? And it was, like, it couldn't have been, like, written out as a script more clearly. But what had happened is, as when it got ready to, like, springtime, and we were having those conversations with leadership in the community in small ways, and in gentle ways, talking about some of these ideas, and specifically talking about having a community, intentional burn there, led by Native and Indigenous people. And what ended up happening is someone not knowing, just not knowing, and having a background with fire, but not in this kind of way, not in relationship with Native and Indigenous people, not in relationship with the land, which is really what that whole conversation is about. It's because as Native and Indigenous people, we have, that relationship uninterrupted. And so that we can introduce the conversations in a way that other people just don't know because of their own trauma, because of all the things, right? So when, with us there on the land, I had wanted that for the land. I had wanted, this peace. And so when, without thinking, without consulting, without anything, it was just burnt and destroyed. It was, oh my God, it was devastating, and still, like the core of me is, shaken. It was yet another historical reenactment moment, and for me, when I looked out, and here had been this, we had just seen it blooming. It was, like just some of those, those beautiful blue, cobalt blue blossoms blooming, and that beautiful meadow, and the grasses and the people and dancing and singing in that meadow. And then, like in one moment, to see it charred, it was blackened, charred, and it was devastating. It shook me to the core. It was literally like, I flashed on, memories with the land of, this devastation, this of our villages and our communities being set torched as a way of controlling and manipulating and forcing, us into other places. And, at that time and all that we were experiencing with the solidarity community and the racism we were experiencing, it was devastating. It was devastating. And, I was grateful for you and, our dear friends in the solidarity community kind of, like really showed themselves at that time, like really came forward and was, they wanted to tell me first that it had happened, but, then I went out there and I saw the land, what was happening, it had been destroyed, and the solidarity circle was really powerful, and that not only did they hold me up in that moment, really being present to my own personal wounding that I felt at that time, but then also like bringing the conversation forward, like how are we going to move from this moment, like what do we do now? What happens next? Like how do you emerge from the ashes? Like literally again and again and again. So Solidarity Circle was there and brought the conversation forward so that we could meet with the gentleman who had lit the fire unknowingly, and we had conversations around the fire pits on the land, and pouring out both how this trauma has been reactivated in each of us, and and sharing on those deep levels. And over time it took us, I don't know how long, it was like, I don't know, 6 weeks or something like that after the fire, something like that. But
yeah, almost 2 months.
Yeah. Do you remember that? Do you have your thoughts about how that was for you? What did you feel?
I myself was unaware of the impact of the burn until I had talked to you later. I was a bystander to the burn, and I was unaware of what was happening until it was about halfway done. And I remember sitting around a fire with you later that day and just being literally grounded by the weight of what had occurred and having to sit on the earth and to see the sadness again and again coming up for you.
Yeah, it's there again too, Thank you for being there. And thank you for, being someone who could be, authentic and transparent, about, all of it. Because I think the conversation was never about like, should we burn, right? Like, I think we all understood that was a necessary piece. And, it's just like how we do the things, the intention and the ritual and the conversation we have around it is, it's like really important. It's yeah. So yeah, it was really powerful when then 6 weeks later, the solutions started emerging, between us after sitting, with each other, numerous campfires, numerous, conversations around the land and sitting in with it for ourselves and listening with the earth and what needed to happen. And so as things, evolved, kind of were able to pull together like a ritual, and on the, in the meadow and with everyone, with the community. And that's what I had wanted from the very beginning, was there to be a powerful moment of healing. And so, we did that. And the week before there was it was, so, again, this is springtime, but, there was a Beltane ritual there, and a lot of the community came together. I wasn't there, but you were.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, before Beltane, a group of us had come together, led by an individual on the land. And we were meeting about how to have this really sacred ritual for that the community has done in the past. And we were talking for the individual represented identities on campus. And so as a non-binary queer individual, I was representing that side, the gender spiral. And there was a female and there was a male. And through this conversation, a lot of past trauma and resistance to ways of including and allowing that gender spiral to be represented came up. And in that, my own wounding came up. And my past traumas around that and my ancestral past traumas through a ritual that I do yearly in celebration of those that have come before me. And in listening deeply to the earth and honoring that turning of the season. And so much so was their lack of understanding and reciprocity and saying that they did wrong, that I wasn't able to attend the ritual with the community. Just furthering this deep impact on me of separating me from this ritual of being with the earth on such a sacred day for her. And this fire, I was approached by Gemma and Bear. I was approached by Gemma and Bear to help participate or to be a part of this ritual with them in the meadow. And the way that Gemma spoke to me about it was that it was to repair many wounds, that this coming together, the community could repair more than just one burning that had occurred, but a burning for also the gender spiral of the queer folks in the community. In particular, I was asked to be the fire tender, which I was denied to be for the Beltane, stating because that was a male only task, and that a gender queer person could not do it. And it was an honor. I remember the day that you came to me, that I was just empty with just gratitude and that deep sorrow that sits within us, those of us who speak to the earth and listen. That this has to happen in order for it to be seen. And I remember sitting with you at the fire pit before, and you going over how to be a fire tender within a ritual with you and Bear, and remembering the feelings of just, I am so honored. I am honored to be the fire tender with Gemma and Bear. I am honored to be able to tend this fire in a way to provide healing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and thank you for, expressing it that way. I feel like, really, the honor was ours, to, really, to be with you and to share that memory, with you and your ancestors inside of you and the generations to come, that, are present with you, and, and with, her, with the earth, with in that meadow, and the Calipuya ancestors, so, and I there's so much that could be said about, like, why that was so important, like, in our native and indigenous ways, I don't know, we really call them queer. There's usually a language, for them. There's a specific word, but it's always, whatever that word is, it's always like denoting that, like, there, that you represent multiple spirits, two-spirited or multiple spirited, and that, you are, kind of that, standing between worlds, Clarissa Pinkola Estes talks about, like, the medial person, the person that stands between, the binary, and, and literally, like, embodying all the spirits, embodying, the generations. So to me, like, that's a place of honoring, and I always, when I remember when hearing about how that was, again, disregarded, and that you and I, and, Fatima, a dear, friend, who is a Black woman poet, and, in her expression, like, all, like, really feeling, all three of us, that persecution, feeling, like, more than just an, oppression, just a, I guess I want to say a stifling, soft, ambiguous oppression, right? We really felt persecution. We really felt in many ways that we were being attacked, and in some way, like, if anything, psychically, right? So, and emotionally. So to have this ceremony or this ritual, it was really more of a ritual, in the way that we think of it, but this opportunity for us to be on the land together and to be leading the conversation, was powerful. And, I shared with you then, like, my understanding of who you are, and, asking you to do this, is that the way that you care for the relationship with the earth, the care for the relationship between human beings, humanity, and the earth. And, yeah, wanting to acknowledge that in you and giving, activating that, through tending that fire. So I thanked you then, and I thank you now for continuing, for being you and continuing to do those things. But yeah, as we sat there, you lit the fire and watching how difficult that was, and yet your persistence, like the fire has a way of, like showing ourselves and showing what's happening on the land. And it was so difficult to light that fire, but that you really, like, the more difficult it was, the more you leaned into it, and the more, you got into that fire, like really, having that conversation with it as a sacred being. And then, that fire, like, lighting, and then, it being a powerful presence and holding space for the transformation that happened. So, through that ritual, we called out, all of these things that we were talking about, all of the pain in the land, the pain, the way that it echoed through our lives. We called out, the patriarchy. We called out the violence. We called out, all of that. And, as I'm thinking about it, it's been almost a year, placing, those things in the fire to be transformed. And it was powerful because, what I saw happening is individuals, coming forward, and, like, we kind of knew some of their stories, but, could see the way that some of those things had echoed through their lives, and had played out, for them. And so it was a transformational moment for myself and for the land. And I guess I remember there was a key place where the fire had risen up, so we all were sitting around. And I had shared some about the meaning of the fire, and the way that the fire transforms us, and the way that the fire sees us as a sovereign being. It sees us and it meets us where we're at, and it gives us a way to transform ourselves and with each other. And so as we were sitting around this fire, this giant, I wouldn't say it was a bonfire, but it was, it was a good sized fire, right?
Yeah.
And we were all feeling, the heat from the flames, and, sitting there, and we had shared some songs, and, it gave people an opportunity to write down some of those things for themselves, and to then place them in the fire, and, yeah, that was really powerful to do as community. Do you remember that?
I do, and I remember tending the fire and just how intense it was. And it wasn't just because, like, I've tended many fires, right, in my lifetime of being with the earth, but this fire felt more intense. Like, I remember sitting next to a close friend, and him saying, "Are you okay?" Because I would, after every time of tending the fire, I would have to dip my upper body in water,
Yeah.
to be able to get that close. And there was almost felt like a pooling into the flames, and a burning and a release.
Yeah.
But also an illuminating, with that light coming from the fire. We were seeing really clearly the people in this circle.
Yeah.
And there was that burning away of, like, the politeness, or like what they thought they should be, or how they thought they should present themselves. And it was just it was a clarity. This is who I am. And it was so powerful. I just remember how grounded I felt through the experience, and the stillness within me, of being able to witness people in such a way, and to witness the way that you and Bear and Dietrich and Oblio facilitated and allowed people, and almost pushed people to that point of clarity, where you created this space around the fire. You honored the fire. You brought that fire energy in and allowed it its full expression to burn and illuminate, and to weave us in through the air pulling up, and allowing that illumination, and allowing that There was the tangible threads between us. I could feel everyone in that circle.
Mm-hmm.
I could feel the waves of sorrow coming from you and Bear as you spoke about your experience. I felt that echo through our threads. And I saw for one of the first times in the community, people actually witnessing and experiencing what you and Bear witness almost sometimes on the regular. And in some, a deeper understanding.
Yeah, thank you for that. You know, as you're sharing, I guess, one of the things that, we were addressing, like you mentioned the pushing, like almost pushing, right? And I think there was a real strong, people outside of that moment could say, oh, why were they being pushy? But, we were really, wanting something to happen there, and I'm wiping tears away, because I think so often, we talk about we want transformation and we want the earth to heal and we want, we love the earth. And, I guess the thing that, when we love someone, we love, the earth, we love the planet, I think oftentimes people think, they think of love in a very fluffy way, like it feels good, and it meets my needs, and it, and it's some of that, right? It's some of that. But I think when we talk about, really loving someone, really loving someone, really wanting something for someone, whether I'm a part of that or not, there's that willingness to be burnt. It's willingness to be consumed, and knowing that, that and feeling some of that pain, feeling with them, the willingness to feel with them, that's what I, and thank you so much, for that willingness to feel that with us, with Bear and I, and to, feel that with the land, with the earth, wherever you go, I think, that's what we were pushing for. We were really wanting people to be willing to feel some of each other's pain, some of the pain for the land, with the land, some of the pain that Native and Indigenous people of, Black women, Black men, Black children have experienced on the land, Native people, because I think, it's not just about feeling for them, right? Like it's not, I think it's to understand that part of, racism, part of the reason why we, I think, and this is my experience, right? Of course, but I think part of the reason why we, I guess I'll just say it, like white privileged folk, right? And part of the dynamic is that, I think Native people, Black people, non-binary folks, part of what we carry or we are, right, is to them all the things that are too painful for them to experience or to acknowledge for themselves, right? And so, in being ourselves, we are that, we cultivate that, and there's a certain amount of, I think, again, depending on each individual, acceptance. And I want to say, like, hopefully we accept that for ourselves. At some point, that's all of our journeys, right? To accept that for ourselves. But a certain of owning that and embodying that, that, is important, right? And I think, that's what this whole conversation is about, really. It's like, how can we, each and the earth, be more fully present and alive. Yes, joy. Yes, with the love, and also, right, these painful places, right? These painful places that we reject or turn away from, or we deny, or we put something on in ourselves, right? And like finding that with each other, right? Finding some kind of way of, embracing that with each other, holding that with each other, and returning like that. That's the name of my workshop that's coming up. It's like returning, because I feel like we need to turn the soil of who we are, right? And then, be present with what comes on earth with each other, right? And I think that we did that in that circle. We did that day. And as painful and exhausting, and as much as it required, everything from each of us, I know that, you're up for that. And again, thank you for that, in your life. And, I'm up for that. And although I might grumble and complain and demand chocolate in the process of it, I think, and I love doing that, because I feel like this is exactly what is going to change our trajectory. I feel like, if we make decisions from these places of deep love and deep, like deep love, and having accept ourselves and each other, then, and, like having moments where we're, constantly in that kind of space with each other, that, really for you and I, and thank you for sharing this on your podcast too, because I think really this speaks to the core of who we both are, what each of us are, like, and the type of work that we're doing in these places, whether we're, like in the garden, like with our hands in the dirt, or we're in the kitchen and our hands are in
Mixing bowl.
In the mixing bowl, or whether we're on Zoom having conversations, it's in the mixing bowl, right? And so thank you for that.
So much. You are a mentor, a dear friend. You're very close to my heart, and my relationship with you has deepened my relationship with the earth in ways that I didn't know could burn me there. And thank you for coming on today and being just so vulnerable and authentic and sharing your wisdom with the wider world. Deeply appreciative of what you bring and what you continue to offer.
Thank you, beautiful. And thank you for having me as part of the conversation. It's an honor to be part of this. And I hope that, people will continue, like it'll steep for them too. And people talk about these things with each other and, see, what wants to emerge through, all of it together. So thank you.
Thank you all for listening, and go back to the earth.